When you think of owning or renting a house as purely a financial decision, then it becomes very complicated. However, whether to own or to rent a house is not purely a financial or an economic question. When you look at it from a purely economic or financial perspective or point, owning a house becomes as complicated as renting. And in fact, it could be argued that if you look at it carefully, it might seem like maybe you are better off renting than buying a house. This is why when you do the calculations, you break down the numbers, then things start becoming very interesting. Often, when we think about either we buy a house, build a house that is, or rent, we're just thinking of, oh, I will stop paying rent. For most people, that's what they think. Oh, I'll just stop paying rent. Now I'm no longer paying rent. But what we forget is that when you buy or build a house, you are going to spend a lot of money. You're going to put down a lot of money. And if you break down that money, then it's easy to compare the cost of renting and owning a house or buying a house. And sometimes the rent seems like it's a better option. Now, here is let's look at this as an example. For most people owning a house in Nairobi, mostly you have to build it yourself. Of course, there are people who buy cash, or there are people who buy or get to own the homes through mortgage, but that's like people who buy and people who get the homes through mortgage is not like the biggest section of home buyers. Mostly it's people who buy plots and they build their own houses. Now, if you're going to buy a plot within Nairobi, you're looking at least 9-10 million for a 50 by 100. And if you want to go a little bit cheaper, then you might have to go to Kiambu County, Kajiado, or Machakos. Then you're likely to go down maybe 3, 4, 5 million. Now, if you take that, let's use the 3 million, or let's use the 5 million as the average, and we are considering Nairobi and the neighboring areas. If you buy a plot for 5 million, and roughly you're going to build a house yourself, and it might cost you something like 15 million, an average house, that's a total of 20 million. Now, I was doing the calculation. If you are the kind of a person who is going to buy that kind of a plot of that value and build that house, you are likely paying a rent of, say, 50,000. That will be on the lower side. Now, if you take that 50,000 and you look how much you'll pay per year, and then you subdivide that with the total amount of, say, 20 million, you are looking at paying using that money to pay rent for 33 years or something, or around that amount of time. Now, that's a very long time. And what I'm saying here is that if you take the cost of acquiring that house and you just put it somewhere and you start paying rent, you're going to pay rent for 33 years. Now, is that better? Because somebody will argue like, okay, at the end of it, you're going to own the house. If you're going to be paying less rent, not more, if you're going to be paying, say, rent of 30, 20,000, then that amount of money can take you maybe up to 50 years of paying rent. Now, 50 years is a very long time. And you have to make the decision whether it's worth it to sacrifice yourself, and then well, you could have paid rent for 50 years. Of course, that's an argument that can be made. But then again, things become even more complicated if the amount that you used to acquire the house was a loan, maybe a mortgage or a loan from a SACCO. Then, of course, the cost goes up because you're going to pay this loan for a long time, and then there's interest and things like that. Of course, everything here has to be taken with the understanding that there are inflation adjustments and things like that. But the point is, paying rent and buying a house are not so much apart. Like, it's not like you are automatically better off buying a house or building your own house, or you are automatically bad off by paying rent. The two can be looked at, and the two have strengths and weaknesses almost equally. Now, but here's the thing. I was one of those people who, at some point, I thought like there wasn't really, like, it wasn't really necessary for you to own a house. That the only thing you needed to focus on is to build your revenue streams do some investment that will generate money over the long period of time. And from that, if you build enough revenue incomes, or if you build um, if you invest in many places where you're going to get an income, then you don't have to worry about rent, but because then you'll be able to pay rent for as long as you live. But then something happened to me at one point, and that changed my perspective. And I've started looking at it like owning a house is not purely an economic or a financial decision that you make. It is more than that. Owning a house gives you stability, and I mean stability in that you don't have, for example, in my case, staying in somebody's house, then somebody just one day comes and tells you, "Oh, I want to move back into my house, and I'm giving you a notice of 3 months to move out." Um, and then now I have to, it's like somebody else is making decisions for me on where I want to live or how I have to live my life. And that I didn't like that. So owning a house gives you stability in that, yeah, the cost might be the same, but when you own your own house, then you basically have more control, have more stability. And the stability also comes in terms of, if you have kids, for example, when you have a home, they can stay there until they go, and they can even come back later as an adult and in the same home, and then they are able to build long-term relationship, because most of us were born in the rural, in the village, and we made friendships and relationships that will last a lifetime with people we were born with, people we grew up with, we went to school with. But if you are born in the city and then you have to move from one place to another because you are changing houses every now and then you don't have that opportunity of building relationships. So when you own a home and you have a family, you have kids, then they are able to build relationship that they can't break simply because, oh, now we have to move to a new estate. So that's another form of stability that you'll get. And also homes, I've come to understand or appreciate that life, memories are a huge thing we get out of life. So when everything else is gone, memories is the one thing that, it's one of the things that remain that are so powerful in our lives. And having a home, of course, you build memories. So if you are living in this house and you build memories with kids, they grow up in that house, those memories, when everything else is gone, those memories are what remains of significant value, I would say. So when you move around, then you are unable to at least preserve some of those memories. But if you live in the same place for 20, 30, 40, 50 years, the family lives in the same place even longer than that, then the memories are able to be preserved. So that's also another aspect of them. So a home becomes kind of like a sanctuary, kind of like it has a lot more emotional value to it than just, oh, it's about the money. Um, and with your own home, you can also customize it the way you want. So when it comes to whether you should own or should rent, don't consider it as a purely economic financial decision, because it is not. There's other things that you need to consider that have nothing to do with the money, like directly, like for example memories and being able to customize, and your kids being able to build a relationship that lasts a lifetime, and stability, and people not making decision for you because, so they feel like, oh, they need to get you out of the house because maybe they need to come back into the house, or they need to rent it out to somebody else. So these are other things that you need to consider. So renting or owning a house, even in Nairobi, is not a purely financial or an economic, or purely financial or economic decision. It's a lot more than that. Those are my random thoughts.